Hello everyone, welcome. We are live as usual for our Tuesday developer Q&A stream. This is going to be a heavily focused stream on what we just released today, which was the RuneScape Rework development blog. There is a lot to talk about. You guys have seen it already. If you haven't seen it already, it's on RuneScape.com. Do check that out. But we're going to be diving into this to say the very least. So to my right I have Mod Jack, and to my left I have Mod Breezy.
Look, I'm looking at the wrong camera.
The one with the light. Anytime you see the camera with the light on, as you can see, that's how you know. Or you can just look at the TV, it's a good indicator. Breezy's first stream with us, well, on a Dev Q&A format anyway, so it's awesome to have you on here. You're able to quickly introduce yourself just for people who aren't aware?
Yeah, I'm Mod Breezy. I was on the Mining Smith and Rework. That was my first project. So I joined as Junior QA last July, working with Mod Jack and the 4Direction team. We're currently doing the RuneScape Rework. That's what we're here for today.
And you recently comped.
And I recently comped as well.
You recently got around to doing the last handful of things on your comp.
Yeah, I finally got around to doing Solak, doing Rots.
120 DG?
120 Dungeoneering and Slayer. I got Slayer just as soon as I got 120 Slayer, ED3 came out. So I didn't get comped.
So onto the Reaper grind. It's all right though. It's not like you got a boss power of it or anything.
Yeah.
Alrighty. So just before we jump into it, a couple of footnotes to go into. Of course, the RuneScape Mobile Android beta cap was released last Tuesday. We've had an absolutely immense amount of downloads already, and it's great to see everyone getting stuck in. So if you want to check it out, you can use the command !RS Mobile. I'm pretty sure we only have a very few amount of slots left, and then it will be full. So if you haven't already, grab that. As always, Parcel from the Hedge, that is ongoing as well. I'm going to use this opportunity to mention at the end of the stream, when RuneScape is fired out, you'll be given a extra parcel. It is uncommon or better, so you might get lucky and get the rare, and might get a little bit of money as well. So good luck to you on that one. So before we jump into the RuneScape Rework devlog, I want to quickly talk about the Onyx stuff, if that's okay. Yesterday's. So obviously, about 3 p.m. yesterday, we hotfixed the ability to get Onyx from Gemrocks. So I just want to kind of use this opportunity to kind of just quickly go into why we've done it, and then we can kind of get onto the topic.
Yeah, I think there were a couple. Broadly, there were too many Onyxes coming into game. Like not too many, not like a few more. Like a lot more Onyxes coming into game. 12,000%, 1,200% more.
10,000% was what we released. It was just incredibly.
It was a reasonable number per day, and then it was thousands and thousands and thousands per day. So it's not, people are saying, well, didn't ED3 affect the price? And it did a little bit. Mm-hmm. This only affected the price a little bit more, but that's because it was at the AUC floor.
So can I just say, so it's not just ED3 though, right? But we're referring to ED1, ED2 because of the Onyx dust that came from that.
Each elite dungeon. I was reading a player had done a good analysis of this this morning, that each elite dungeon saw a spike in the price of Onyxes because people were using them for deaths, and then
would go down.
It went down again, because the price corrected over time. But actually, Onyxes were in a reasonably good place in terms of supply and demand. Like, they were coming into the game and they were going out of the game. They were floating somewhere around double their out price, sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little bit lower. So although it looks like the price only dropped a little bit, because it dropped from like, what, 1.6 to 1? Something like that, 1 million? It was actually like, if that wasn't the AUC floor, they would be worthless, because there are so many in game.
So the only reason, of course, it retains that price is
the only reason they're retaining
same,
that
of
price
course,
they're
with rune stuff, of course, prior to the minus.
Exactly, yeah. Now, so I mean, there's a general question there about, like, that's why it's a problem. We have no problem with skillers making 1 mil an hour. That's not a problem. Like, we're not nerfing skilling making 1 mil an hour. The problem is they're making 1 mil an hour straight from raw AUC price, and also at the expense of the healthy economy of Onyxes. So, like, Onyxes are a bit, like, we're hoping that Onyxes are going to recover over time. Right now, Onyxes are ruined, and we don't want Onyxes to be ruined. Like, that's not, if we wanted to give skillers money, we wouldn't do it by just picking a bit of the game and ruining it. So in that regard, it was a bug. It wasn't a bug. The drop rate was actually the same. The problem is, like, there's an interesting problem with mining and smithing. We were really focused on, and this is partly just my fault personally, sorry about this, not enough people are going to play this update. Like, all throughout the whole mining and smithing rework, everyone internally was worried, like, we're spending a lot of dev time on this. Is anyone going to play it? We were so worried. Like, we didn't actually go out of our way to, like, force it to be good, if you see what I mean. Mm-hmm. We didn't, like, ruin the game on purpose to get people playing mining and smithing. Nothing like that. But we were primarily focused, our big concern was not enough people were going to play it. Turns out, put in an AFK mining method, everyone goes and does it, like just forever. So we massively underestimated how much people were going to
I do feel like, in a way, mobile's kind of emphasised that a bit more. So
Yeah, a little
since
bit,
I think I'm correct in saying that since obviously we had the beta cap increase, we had a lot more people using mobile to AFK gem rocks as an example. So that might have, of course, added on top of that. But I guess in regards,
And that makes sense. Like if you think about it, that makes sense.
Yes.
But genuinely, we weren't expecting the sheer number of people, like huge proportion of the population. It's answered the question of like, do people want to do AFK skilling for wealth? Yes, it turns out they do. So now we're going to, because of this problem about outprice, like alking gold is bad. There was a suggestion on Reddit this morning, which was, can you just replace it with the first age coin, which is an item, if you're not familiar with it, just alks for 1 million GP. And that would also be a problem because gold just pouring in through alk, especially when you can just trivial AFK on multiple accounts. Like you just sit there with your 6 mobile phones just farming RuneScape, right? Like that's just pouring money into the economy, which is causing inflation.
Okay, so if I was to give you a suggestion, which I've seen a few times, which is why not allow us to get it during Traherne hour only? Why would you say no to that?
That might work. It might not. We'll have to look at what it does. That would probably still produce so many that the supply would exceed the demand. The reason Onyx is specifically a problem. So, I mean, if you're familiar with the mining smithing economy, you'll see Elder Rune is also outpriced.
Yes.
And that's also a problem.
Animikers and so on and so forth. Yeah.
That's also a problem that's at outprice because that's not where it's supposed to be. And we were having a big discussion about this last week, and like, basically the demand from smithing isn't exceeding the supply from mining because, broadly speaking, everyone is mining, but not that many people are smithing, so the supply is exceeding the demand, and it's gone wrong, and we need to fix that. It's particularly bad for onyxes because the price of onyxes actually determines the price of death.
Yes.
Which has a huge knock-on effect on the whole.
Well, and obviously, when onyx is was at the price of gold, which was its alk price, it meant that a run of death cost was negligible versus, of course, dying. Normally having an asylum
so in that regard, making it be a first stage coin would be better because at least it wouldn't be having a knock-on effect on the cost of death, but it would still be bad to be introducing essentially just uncapped 1 mil out gold per hour per miner, which is tens of thousands.
Okay, cool.
So like to reiterate, like we don't want to nerf smithing. We don't think that 1 mil an hour is too good for smithing. We don't want to just introduce a new alchemy. It may be. So, because we've got this problem in general with mining, right? We don't want you to just make money through alking, if we can possibly help it, because it's bad for the economy. But it's not that we begrudge skillers their 1 mil an hour. Like 1 mil an hour is fine. Like it could be higher. So we need to figure out a way of doing that. Skillers need to produce something that people want to buy on the GE. And right now, there's a lot of stuff that people just aren't buying on the GE because it's at out. Like obviously they're buying it because it's at out price. There's not as much that's higher than out price that people are buying that we can flood into game, because almost by definition, right, as soon as we put it on, not necessarily gem rocks, right, but something I can just sit and farm 24 hours a day AFK, it's going to flood into game, it's going to hit out price, it's going to ruin it. So whatever we provide is going to have the same problem. So it's not a trivial problem to solve.
Cool. Well, obviously, I think that allowed us to go into it much more than just a post, which is great. Yeah. So Breezy, do you mind moving the cactus? I do apologise because I can't see the chat properly, and I want to try.
Move it left or right?
Left. Yeah. That's Stop. Yep. There we go. It's like we're playing Conquest then. Alrighty. Let's go into the Comcape Rework devlog. Obviously, we released a post today. We're going to use this opportunity to. I think should we start with the poll that we did a few weeks back first of all, or do you want to dive into it first?
Well, do you want to talk about how the update today went?
Yep.
Like the release.
Yeah.
Sorry,
I was going to say update. Do you want? Yeah. How
update? Did you not know?
Yeah. How did release go in that regard? Are we happy?
We've had a lot of feedback so far. The initial reception was good. There's a lot of people who have different types of reservations. So some are fine with it, but don't want us to change the appearance of capes. Some don't like the fact that they think we're handing out comp cape, and some don't like the fact that the stats might be nerfed. So there's a lot of different points of feedback, but it's really good to get this type of feedback on day one already, which helps us go into discussions and see how we can improve it. And we've got a few things today to talk about.
So a few weeks back we released 2 polls, one for non-compers, one for compers. This was an opinion poll, is that correct?
Yeah, so it wasn't a guarantee.
So there wasn't a guarantee. We abstained from releasing the results at the time, but we're going to use this opportunity now to go through the 2 polls, the individual questions, and then reveal to you the percentages for them, so you have an idea of, we'll talk about how these guys used those results and went from there. So
the TLDR version is there's nothing that surprising in it.
Okay.
There weren't any like shock results where we were like, oh my god, that makes the comp cape way easier to design.
So I'm going to try and cut this down as much as possible because some of the questions are very long-winded just to make sure obviously you all understood it. But we'll start with the poll for non-compers. The first question was in relation to...
Oh yeah, we should probably explain that. So we ran 2 different versions of the poll.
Yes.
One was if you've ever owned the comp cape, so current compers or ex-compers. The other one was everyone else. And you were only eligible for one of the 2 polls. But the questions were the same on both.
Cool. Okay, so the first question was related to the best in slot gear, at the time, currently comp being locked behind completionism, and we'd like to fix this. So what was your preferred solution? The answers were they should be cosmetic only, or these capes should remain best in slot, or just don't change anything. And for non-polars, these capes should be cosmetic only was 32%, the best in slot was 41%, and should remain best in slot, sorry, it was 41%, and 27% said we shouldn't change the way anything works. So overall you have 68% of people who are non-compers saying they should remain best in slot or not change whatsoever. So did that surprise you in any way whatsoever?
No, I don't think so. No, I guess we didn't expect it to be quite so high for non-compers, but no, I mean it's a controversial major change to the identity of the game, right? Generally that doesn't go down well.
Mm-hmm. Some old updates never had requirements added to comp and or trim. Assuming comp is no longer tied, should we go back and add requirements? And the answers were go back and add all the requirements immediately. That had 28%. Add the missing requirements, but do it over time. Had 45%. Or don't add any missing requirements. Had 27%. So the winner for that one was add them, but do them over time. Again, any...
Yeah, no, it's just what we were expecting.
Okay.
To get out of that, yeah.
Cool.
It'd be easy, like... Yeah, which is easier for us, sort of depends on how you look at it. Like it's conceptually easier to just add them all, but actually that's a massive amount of work, which could delay the project quite a lot. So actually doing them over time is best for everyone.
Actually, to kind of cut down on time, I'm going to read the compers results for questions 1 and 2, and then we'll go back and forth 3, 4, and 5. So for question 1, which was in regards to best in slot, for compers said that 22% of compers said they should be cosmetic only. 29% said they should remain best in slots, but be easier to get, or 49% said that we shouldn't change anything about it. So if you compare the don't change non-compers versus compers, we have 27% versus 49%, which is, I guess, expected from compers, right?
That's consistent across all the questions, that as you'd expect, compers said they preferred not to change it, they preferred to keep their benefits, which makes...
That's fair. For question 2, in regards to requirements being added over time, 26% of compers said, yes, go back and add all the missing requirements. 41% said, add them gradually over time. And 33% said, don't add any missing requirements. So 1/3 of them there, which is interesting. So for question 3, should we write up a consistent definition of what we should do and shouldn't do on comp and trim? 84% of non-compers said yes, we should remove requirements if they don't fit the definition, and 16% of them said no, old requirements should never be removed. Now if we compare that to the compers, 65% of the compers said yes, whereas 35% said no.
Yeah, I mean the difference is not surprising. The fact that even compers, a majority said that we should tidy up the requirements, I think was a bit of a surprise. Mm-hmm. Now we're not...
We expect them to stick to how it was.
We're not going to interpret that to authoritatively mean remove Castle Wars without like investigating that question further, right? Okay. So we're not just going to look at that, because this is what I promised when we did the poll. We're not going to look at that and say, oh, the majority say we should remove Castle Wars, so we're going to remove Castle Wars, because we specifically said it's about the general principle. Does it fit the mechanics? Does it fit the formal definition and requirements of the cape, right? But there is a clear majority, even among compers, for capes whose requirements make sense, rather than that just have arbitrary stuff on them.
Cool. So for question 4, the way capes of accomplishment work make people feel compliant to grind up new requirements. What's the preferred solution for getting the cape back? And option 1, which was a special cape for players who previously owned the cape, came in at 30% for non-compers. A grace period, which allowed them to wear the cape while they complete the content, was 51%, or none. This is not a problem for 18%, whereas compers said 21% for a special cape, 59% for a grace period, and 21% for no, not a problem at all.
So fairly similar. But
So if we look back on the last time we've done a so-called amnesty, as it were, for comp, that was with Slayer 120 with the Menopause release. What did we learn from that, out of curiosity?
it was massively controversial. The primary thing we learned from it was it just created a load of aggro. Half the player base were unhappy that we were doing it. The other half of the player base were unhappy that we weren't doing it right, or something like that. You know,
Yeah,
it didn't seem to make anyone happy.
Very contentious. That's safe to say.
So that's why we shied away from. We haven't done it more. But the poll result fairly clearly shows that people like the idea. I think the problem with Slayer was it just kind of came out of nowhere. No one really understood how it worked. Why is there this time limit? So what we put that straight in the design is trying to do it in a more consistent way, which we'll get on into.
Yeah, we have a lot.
That's the one which has the clearest, more straightforward result, because we can just do that.
Cool.
If you want grace periods, we can do grace periods.
And obviously, we got to this question. This is the last question asked in the poll, which was: some players consider content like force group content or very challenging PBM bosses to be inaccessible to them. Should content that's inaccessible be on Capes of Accomplishment? This was essentially the Reaper question, correct? So we had three options, which was yes, but all relevant content should be on capes, and that was 26% from non-compers. No, but there should be a separate cape or trim which recognises completion of the content, which was 50% from the non-compers. And no, this content shouldn't be required for any capes or for the capes, and that was 25% for the non-compers. Now, if we look at the compers, 40% of them said all relevant content should be on the cape. 34% of them said there should be a separate cape. And 26% said that this content should not be required for capes whatsoever.
That's the most. I think that's the one with the biggest. Where there's amongst non-compers, there's a majority for put it on a different cape.
Yep.
Whereas compers, there's a plurality for keep everything on the cape. When we sat down to try to figure out how we would do the design, because the problem is you can point at one or two specific requirements, but actually when you look at like what does comp mean, what is it? So this is taking into account. There should be consistent requirements, right? If you start down the path of, let's say your reflexes aren't very good, you're not very good at PVM content, right? There's certain things you just can't do in game, and that's a player type that we support and sympathise with. There's a lot of content in the game you can't do. It's not just Solak. And so as soon as we started looking at it from that perspective, like who is actually prevented from participating in what content, actually we'd have to strip a lot off comp. Mm-hmm. So although there's a majority, or a slight majority among non-compers for have a different cape with hard achievements on it, actually there wouldn't be very much on the base cape. It would basically be max, plus some grindy stuff like Livid Farm, right? And then any combat really starts coming into like, this is a more difficult cape. And that actually affects minigames, it affects, what was the other one that came up that was surprising? I can't remember what it was. I mean, you can't even necessarily max if you're like, I can't do any hard PVM. You can't complete all quests because you can't kill Sliske. You can't do dungeoneering unless you're leeching, which if you're leeching, then you can do anything, right? Well, sorry, bar a few solo things. So actually, we couldn't make a design. Like I was very much on the side of let's have two capes. Let's have a hard cape and not an easy cape. Let's have a hard cape and a cape that doesn't require you to do reflex-based activities. And actually, when we sat down and started trying to design what that cape would look like, it didn't make sense.
Cool, right, okay, let's get into why we're doing this then. So we've obviously, as we mentioned, we had the release earlier on today, the dev vlog. So if I was to try and get you guys to try and summarize, why are we reworking this now? What would you be able to say for that?
So the first dev blog that Modjack had written up, I think, talks about some of these issues. So I think there were 4 main points, which are problems, which we also copied into the design document as well. The first one is comp being tied to best in slot stats and benefits. So you get players who are chasing it for the stats and for the abilities, and not because they like completionism, right? They don't like Livid Farm, they don't like player-owned farm. They actually just want a PVM, they just want to teleport and stuff. But we're making them slave through all these other achievements just to get this cape, which is best in slot. I forgot what order they come in.
I got you. There you go.
The second problem was the consistency of the requirements. Oh yeah, sorry. Hold on. I need to read it first.
Do you want my 2-word version now, guys?
What's your 2-word version? Yeah.
I summarised them in 2 words.
Let's see.
There you
I can't read writing.
Inconsistent.
Okay, sorry, I'm not good at
So the second issue is inconsistent requirements. That being that, like, maybe years ago we would have added, for example, Livid Farm and whatnot, right? But when Player on Farms came out, there's no comp requirement for Player on Farms.
The only common requirement we had with Player on Farm was the music track, and obviously the music track only came from the seasonalizer. So there was a bit of the thing is as well. I mean, to that point, I think it's safe to say sometimes it's very scary to add a comp rack to content because it affects player perception.
It can ruin the update.
If you look at, I can list two perfect examples right now. The Reaper Shop update we did in January 2018 or 2017, I think it was 2018, where we added a load of new Reaper rewards. We added them to the Trim Completionist Cape. Because some people had spent all their Reaper points on Hydrix, they didn't expect anything new coming. They then had to do so many Reapers to then get that Trim Completionist requirement done. That affected the sentiment of that content. And then the other one, I believe, was the initial release of the Ark Islands content, which had some comprex, which was very time-gated in regards to the effort you had to put in to get there. And that, of course, hurts the perception of that content. So yeah, to that point, yes, the second one.
That's tied into the grace periods problem.
Yes.
If it's a grind, it's not just I have to do comp, I have to do this grind that I don't want to do to get my comp back. It's also I can't PVM until I've done this grind.
Yeah, suddenly like.
So you're just slamming out this grind in as few days as possible so you can get back to PVM.
Am I different to the norm then? I mean, I'm really close to comp. I would love the stats, but like it's not a hinder. It's a little hindrance.
It's not. It's not like a literally. It's not a, you literally need.
Yeah.
It's
just the addition.
That's how some players think. That's how a lot of players think.
When all 10 of your presets are suddenly messed up because you don't have comp cape anymore, and then you have to like
it's fair.
Fix them all up with max cape, that can be annoying. And I guess like I've heard from people that certain like AOD teams and stuff like require you to have comp. I don't know how true that is.
It's also just it's an efficiency mentality thing.
Honestly, I'm just going to say this right now. Can we get this camera up? Honestly, if you are making a team that you literally need a comp cape to join for AOD, that is BS, and you can take that from me literally. I think that's absolute nonsense. Because if that's the case, I couldn't do AOD, but I can do it. So. Honestly. Anyway.
I want to do this like thought for the day with Shawnee.
Seriously, I hate that nonsense.
We should close with that every time.
#truth.
Anyway, if we go into the third one, which is problematic requirements. So this is where Mod Jack mentioned Castle Wars, and we have like Reaper and stuff like that. That of course affects like the perception of a comp. So ED3, we have, of course, just brought it out. There's that Reaper requirement, and some people can get through bosses 1 and 2, and then some people struggle on the ambassador. And they're like, okay, I'm never getting comp back now because I can't do it. Even being, in a group, it can be that problem. So I can understand, of course, where that perception comes from as well.
Yep.
And the fourth one is the lack of objectives to aim for. So what specifically do we mean by that? Out of curiosity.
When you max, there is suddenly like the next tangible step up from that. In terms of a cape, in terms of something visual that you can get is comp. And then there doesn't seem to be anything like in between that. So you can go for 120s, you can get 200 mils, but there's nothing that, there's nothing set in stone or is RuneScape wide. Like being maxed is RuneScape wide, being comped is RuneScape wide.
That's particularly true in the context of like Reaper and other problematic requirements. Yeah. If you're not going to get Reaper, if you've decided that you can't or won't do certain hard requirement, what's the point of doing anything? You're maxed, so there isn't anything to aim for.
Actually, there's something I want to make very clear, which is everything we're mentioning and talking about is subject to change, is not final. So obviously we'll get to it where some of the topics that have come up where people are like, please don't remove X, Y, and Z. We will get into that, but I just want to make that very clear. This can change. It is not final, but the main thing is that these guys are looking for your feedback to try and make this the best they can be. Kind of similar to Mining and Smithing in that regard, right? In regards how it was done.
It's a more controversial, less complex update than Mining and Smithing, so we're hoping to get more feedback.
Okay, so let's jump into it. So the first bit in regards to...
there's one more thing to say about lack of objectives as well. I don't think we actually put this in the document, but it also applies at the other end. If you've got comp, if you've got trim comp, well, then now what do you do? So actually, there's scope to expand upwards as well, and we've kind of tried to design that in as well.
Okay.
So it applies in both directions. People who don't have comp and people who do have comp, what do they have to do?
Okay, so let's get into how you guys are going to plan to tackle this, which we'll start with the improved achievements and new capes. So the pitch was to change the achievement categories into skills, combat, lore, exploration, minigames, and miscellaneous. and then you would bring them into what you consider to be tiers. So let's go into lore tiers first. Lore tier
So
1, tier 2, tier 3.
we can't definitively say what's in the tiers yet.
Sure.
So what we're pitching is that there'll be 3 tiers per category, which is roughly equivalent to sort of comp, trim comp, and then insane comp or true comp or whatever you want to think of it. Like reasonable completionism achievements, crazy completionism achievements, and then
insane.
Yeah, insane completionism achievements. So until we sit down and actually plot out, what our plan is to just write down every single thing you can do in the game on post-its, and then like put them all up on the wall and basically lay out the capes like that. But until we actually sit down and do that, there's no way we can definitively say what is and isn't in a tier, because it might be that we say, well, all this is obviously in tier 1, and all this is obviously in tier 3, and then we check and actually there's nothing in tier 2, so we might have to change the plan.
So your plan, in a sense, is like the meta achievements, right, to indicate the tiers as it goes. So if I just use what you published today as an example, you mentioned that tier 1 lore could require all quests to be completed and thus replace the quest cape. Tier 2 lore could require all the mini and post quest achievements, plus of course tier 1 being done. And then tier 3 could require the rest of the lore category achievements and all of the lore books plus tier 2 lore.
Yeah.
Now, obviously,
as I just said, we haven't sanity checked that.
Of course.
That plan might not actually make sense because we haven't sat down and plotted.
So can we talk about MQC, I guess, while we're at it? Because obviously that was some of the points that came up from the release of.
Yeah. So a lot of the capes do map onto existing capes.
Okay.
Like what we've labelled tier 1 skilling is effectively the max cape.
So I could still have an MQC and walk around with the MQC and stuff.
Well, so there's been some internal disagreement about whether or not the old capes still exist. Like, so the design says we're going to be removing, because it doesn't, like, so we've got this new framework where there's 18, there's not 18 capes, but there's 18 sort of achievements, 18 meta achievements, and then of those 9 have capes because we don't think the other 9 actually need capes. And then that effectively replaces the current system of max quest cape, master quest cape, and so on. So in the design, we've specified that we're going to be removing the old ones. We are interested in people's feedback on that. So let us know, because there's some internal disagreement about how we should be handling that.
I think it'd been, I mean, is there any harm in keeping them as like a prestige thing in that sense?
I mean, well, that's kind of how we've tried to handle the existing comp and trim comp.
Or even like keepsake outfits.
Keep them in as like legacy. The problem in this case is because they are essentially identical. Like, there's unlikely to be any difference between the quest cape and the tier 1 lore cape. Now, it could be that we can just call the tier 1 lore cape the quest cape, right? But then, how does its appearance work? We need to make 9 capes. Like, we sat down and tried to map it out, and they don't work. Like, it's quite difficult for us to make a tiered set of capes that makes logical sense.
It's very weird in the case of like the max cape, right? If you make if you say that tier 1 skills is the max cape, and then you would think that tier 2 cape then is some form of like extra version of that, but currently that's what comp cape is, right?
Yeah.
And then
visually.
So visually that's what happens. So that's one of the issues. But I mean, I don't.
You'd ideally want the tier 2 skilling cape to look like an improved version of the tier 1 skilling cape.
The other.
But it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, the other point of disagreement internally is how we handle retro stuff.
Yeah, retroactive stuff.
Yeah. So it's
No, you mean retro graphics.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a discussion about how we handle that and if we can keep it that way or not, or you know.
If particularly the current appearance of the max cape, quest cape, master quest cape really matters to you, then let us know. Give us some feedback.
Does it matter if it matters to me? I haven't got them, but I can imagine it mattering to me.
I mean,
if I have them.
I've got comp cape, I've got max cape. I want them to stay. So I like when we talk about this in the team, I hate saying that we're going to remove it. I hate that, but I can't go against sort of everything else that's happening. So we kind of have to take you guys' feedback and take it to the table and say this is what the players have given us. We need to work with that.
I'm going to be honest. The chat kind of have made it quite clear.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, 100%. From what I can see, anyway.
I
feel like there's kind of a meme style with "Don't touch the MQC" in caps or like keeping it, but I don't know. Anyway, it's all perception, and that's up to you guys.
I'm quite surprised actually that people like MQC more than max cape, because I thought people would like it more because you can recolor it.
Yeah, but the thing is with the MQC is that it's very unique in its color and particle style in regards to the trail you get.
Yeah.
I think it's a really pretty cape, to be fair.
No,
Okay, let's get this excites me, this bit. The non-stat cape bonuses section. Now, in short, you can read all of this in the doc. I'll try and summarize as the best I can. But what the pitch is here is essentially benefits are on capes. For example, if you look at the completionist cape, you have the spirit cape inside it. You can add the bone sack, the Jared's, Finn, Ava's, accumulated, so all that stuff. We take that away from the cape, correct? And then we put it onto the
Everything.
Everything.
Basically, put it on everything.
So so essentially passives,
Yeah.
which is also
We'll need to look at the exact implementation of that. It might be you need to unlock it again. It might be you have it unlocked automatically. It might be that there's a new reward that allows you to unlock it. But however we get there, the idea is that you won't need to wear the comp cape to get all those benefits at the same time, because you'll be able to get all those benefits at the same time regardless.
So if you complete animal magnetism, you have Ava's accumulator, and of course you haven't got comp capes, you're not going to benefit from that effect unless you currently have Ava's alerter.
Yeah.
Then you can just have it a cape, and you have that as a passive slot on that cape.
It would no like the way I would think about it is it's just no longer anything to do with capes.
Sorry, it's just a passive.
This is just your bonus.
But in regards to
because we assume it in combat balancing anyway, right? So
Yeah.
like that's the thing. It doesn't really make any difference.
Okay, but in regards to teleports, that's on the cape slot.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The
We'll have to look
so
at,
far
like-
it is, but it is dependent on the capes. So for example, like I think we were having a discussion today about the fire cape and the passive that you get, or not the passive, but when you wear a fire cape and then you can kill ice strike worms, should that be on all capes or just fire cape?
Yeah.
And the thinking is that because it's specific and niche to the fire cape, it should probably stay.
It's one of the few
other
that
things
sort of
are general.
thematically makes sense.
Yeah. So
And it's such a niche benefit as well.
yeah, it's something we have to decide for each and every single benefit that
Yeah.
comes from quests or whatever that's on the comp cape right now.
But the general principle is to remove that problem from the comp cape by making it less of an issue, because you'll have all these benefits anyway.
And obviously, as I mentioned, because there are a lot of right-click options for capes, there was a suggestion for implementing some sort of cape customization interface, so you can decide what goes on.
That would be part of, like, if we need to implement that, we will.
Sure.
If it ends up with an overwhelming number of options on it, then we'll just sort that out with an interface.
Right, let's get to cape stats. This is where we're going to get into the nitty-gritty, because obviously stats are very, important for people, understandably. So I'll just read the first paragraph, which I think kind of summarizes what you guys are trying to do very well here, which is stats are useful for combat, and we feel it is incorrect to force you to do things like farming or mage training arena. Yeah, that's me right now. In order to get the stat benefit from the comp cape. This again ties into problem one, which is too many benefits tied to the comp cape. So the pitch here is...
It's similar to what to the previous point. So rather than having the comp cape be an object with really good stats, instead, so I'm going to oversimplify and say something that's not quite correct, but for the sake of keeping it straightforward, if you've unlocked the comp cape, then instead you get a passive stat bonus, which then stacks with the cape that you're wearing.
So if I have...
Now, the reason what I said was incorrect is it's not anymore in our proposal about unlocking comp. It's about unlocking any of the tier 1 meta achievements.
Okay, so if...
There's two aspects to it.
Okay, so give me some values that you get if you complete tier 1.
I don't have to memorise them.
I was hoping you'd give me random numbers. But I'd be able
11.
To just...
There you go.
Sure, okay, so if it gives us 11 armour, that would then be added on top of
Added
my
on to
current
whatever
capes.
you're wearing in your cape slot, yeah.
Okay,
because that's another. I mean, we haven't written it down as one of the major problems because it's not that big a deal, but it's something we'd like to fix. The existence of the comp cape means you no longer care about cape drops. Doesn't matter what cape, because you're wearing the comp cape, and that's a shame. Like, that's not that we want to take away your sense of accomplishment or your bonuses, right? But the way that it is implemented, because there is this physical cape object that has stats that are really good, means that your cape no longer matters. Which means we just don't make capes.
We
right?
can't go.
There's no point making any capes.
Yeah, we can't go beyond that either. We can't make something that's better than current comp cape, because when we do, it's like, well, you just took everything.
Yeah, exactly, right? So then we just have to buff the stats on comp to compensate. So then you still wouldn't wear the new cape. So basically, we'd release a new cape, and all that would do is buff comp.
Yeah.
So by implementing it in the way that it's a stacking benefit on top of your cape, means capes matter and comp matters. Okay. And then the second part of that fix is, rather than tying it to comp, we're tying it to any tier 1 achievement category. So that's basically max or quest or reaper or like we need to think about, like if we do the misc category and it turns out the misc tier 1 is absolutely trivial and there's basically nothing in it, then obviously we wouldn't give you the stats for that, right? So this is all subject to like working out how it actually is. But broadly speaking, the idea is that you can focus on one area of the game and get your best in slot cape stats from that. You don't have to go do livid farm if you're actually a boss.
Yeah. So like if you are purely a PVM player, you could get the combat tier 1 achievement, and then you don't have to touch any scaling, any like mini games right
Like
now.
we still want you to do that content, right?
Yeah.
And you may want to because there are rewards attached to it, but you're not forced to just to have best in slot.
I think the important thing to make clear is so obviously we're talking about this right now, and just talking about it, there is a lot going on here. There's all these different variations and so on and so forth. So how is that communicated in game? Like do you have ideas of how that can be done?
Not off the top of my head, no. We'll have to put it somewhere.
Yeah.
They'll have to be. I mean, because there's actually some passive buffs that came in with mining and smithing as well that are kind of hidden. As well. And there are a few in game. There's not very many, but there's a few passive buffs. We might just need a screen that shows you the passive buffs you're currently got.
It might be part of an achievement, like meta achievement of like, have you unlocked all these passives on your player? But I mean, that's a fair point. It is a problem. Like right now, it's not visual.
Yeah.
To see what's like, have I got Avas? Have I got the Spirit Cape? Have I got X, Y, and Z?
We might need to just introduce like a passive. Like we wouldn't want to put them all on the buff bar.
Oh no.
Because that would be overwhelming, right? So we might need just some screen where you can see all.
So someone said in the chat, okay, so what if I complete tier 3 of all? Can I get 1 cape for all capes?
Wait, what?
That's what I just read. Literally.
If you
Can I
have
get
all
one
tier 3 capes, you'll have the tier 3 comp cape.
Is there like a tier?
That's-
Okay, so
that's
you
how
have
it
a tier 3 comp cape.
Yeah, so there's a cape for 3 out of the 6 achievements at each tier. If you've got all 6 achievements, you get the comp cape at that tier. We didn't get to that bit yet.
Oh, well, yeah, we're actually onto the new comp cape now, actually, as a heading. So, in short, this is to address problem 4, which is a lack of stuff to work towards once you get comp. You mentioned this obviously earlier on in the stream. So the pitch for this is to add 3 new comp capes, which have a generic name of tier 1, tier 2 for tier 3.
Yeah,
I'm sure
this naming isn't final.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll
We're just trying to make it easy to understand at the moment. We can call it like the Grand Master, big head comp cape or whatever. Like, we can give it a good name later. But for now, it's like there's 3 tiers, right? And there's a tier 1 cape, and there's a tier 2 cape, and there's a tier 3 cape.
So, in short, presumably they each have a meta that you have to get to get them.
So you just need to do all the categories. So if you get all the tier 1 categories, you get the tier 1 comp cape. If you do all the tier 2 categories, you get all the tier 2 comp cape, which we think is roughly equivalent to trim, possibly slightly easier, possibly slightly harder. This is what we haven't sat down and played. In practice, it's probably likely to be a bit more work, but no individual achievement will be as hard as 5K Castle Wars games. That's my intuition. That's definitely not final, but I suspect we take off the most ridiculous stuff, but possibly add on a few more things that aren't as ridiculous. And then there'd be tier 3 comp, which is probably significantly harder than current trim.
Okay.
Again, without having actually sat down and plotted it out, that's the intuition of what it is.
I may have missed it because it might already be in here, but titles-wise, are you going to do stuff about titles when it comes to it? Because obviously right now we have the 2 titles, which is completionist, well, 3, completionist, completionist with a gold trim, and also the master quester. So
I guess we have. It's not as important, so we haven't thought about it too much.
Of course.
But I would expect the'd probably be a title associated with each.
I guess more from a visibility perspective, I guess.
So if there's 6, because the title costs us so little to develop, like capes are actually, you'd be surprised, capes are actually quite expensive, which is partly why we don't want to add in the 9 capes for the categories we think players don't really care about. So like skilling, questing, PVM really matter, right? But there's no harm us adding like a mini game title at each tier, and then obviously it comp can have a title at each tier, and they may be the existing titles or they may be slightly different titles, depending on how that works.
Yeah. Cool. All right.
Again, let us know, like, if the exact existing title is really important, tell us that, and we'll make sure that there's a way to get the exact existing title.
And again, this is the important thing, like, just tell us, because, we have the Discord, we're on the official RuneScape Discord channel server with the channels we have set up and everything like that, so it's very important to hammer home.
It's like 15 channels, come and check it out.
Yeah, there's a lot. Okay, grace periods, this is where we're gonna get fun here. So, definition of a grace period is time from...
Yeah, when the content comes out, you don't lose your cape immediately, basically.
Okay.
You have a bit of time to get your cape back. And what we've pitched is rather than each update you have, say, a month to get your comp back, instead, because that's quite hard to keep track of what came out when and how long you have to do it, we'd have to create some in-game interface showing you how long you have for each particular update. What we've proposed instead is every 3 months or every 6 months, there's a day, and on that day, you lose your comp if you haven't caught up. So everything that came out in the last 3-month period or 6-month period, depending on how frequently they are, you've got until that day to do it.
Wow.
And what we'd expect is that would be after a big update, not just before a big update, if that makes sense. So if we released a new skill, we wouldn't then just have what we're calling this lockdown, right? We wouldn't have that like the week after, because then you'd only have a week. Or if we did, it could be that, lockdown week scheduled, and then a new skill comes out, and we're like, well, the skill has to come out just before the lockdown week, 'cause it's just the way it works. In which case, we wouldn't tie it to that lockdown week. We'd say, no, you can do it You can do it 3 months later or 6 months later or whenever. So then the idea is you know how long you've got. You know you've got until whatever June.
Yeah,
You've got until June to get all this done.
That's a little too long.
I think 3 months is okay. I think 6 months might be a tad.
I think 3 months is a massive problem as to why we had the Menopause criticism. Personally, from my experience of the launch of Menopause all the way up until September when we removed the cape, the 3 month time frame I think was considered too long. I think 3 months is a little too long for someone who is dedicated to keeping their cape. I think 3 months is a little too lenient, but I don't know, that's maybe my personal perception.
It works. I mean, because the capes would all be split down as well. That will have an effect. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not disagreeing with you. That will have an impact on the meta, the meta game of, a quest comes out, but I didn't lose my skilling cape. A new skilling update comes out, but I didn't lose my quest cape, and you keep your stats, and that will have a big impact on the way that players respond to updates. So
just looking at the chat and looking at the numbers they're throwing in, some people saying 1 month, some saying 2 weeks, 1 week. So obviously it's very variant. I'm seeing 1 month commonly at the moment. But I mean, again, this is, and what I love about stuff like this is that it shows how passionate people are about stuff like this because of the different opinions and everyone getting stuck in and stuff. But, and this is why we have this stream as well, just so we can have these kind of discussions. I think it's very important.
The absolute primary purpose of having grace periods at all is just so you can do content with your comp cape on, right?
And avoid the preset problem like
Breezy You can do a quest while wearing your quest cape. You can do, so to an extent, the exact length of time isn't that important. It's more the principle you don't have to do it on day one.
I think the length of time can be important depending on what is in that content.
Oh yeah, sorry, I just mean that is super negotiable.
Yeah,
That's
for
what
sure.
I mean. Like, assuming that we all agree, and I can see us polling this directly, right? But assuming we all agree, but I mean, to be honest, the survey came back pretty overwhelmingly in favour of grace periods, so it doesn't seem very controversial. But assuming that we all agree there are grace periods, we can then negotiate over how long those grace periods are. Absolutely, yeah. Because that's not that's literally just us changing a number in code. So that's really we could forget to poll it and then be like the day before launch, be like, oh wait, hang on, we need to make it 1 month, and we can just change it. I mean, we shouldn't because of testing, but you know what I mean. It's not a difficult thing to change, so it's not a big deal if we need to.
Cool. Okay, well, that was I enjoyed that discussion. Breezy, is there anything you want to chime in before I jump onto the next bit, or like?
Not really.
No, that's fine.
No. I mean, it's quite it can always depend on when content comes out. Like you can have months where nothing goes in comp cape, like we currently have. Although I hope post rework that's not the case.
If I look at comp cape requirements, I mean, if we look at this year, we added the 2 mining and smithing ones.
Yeah.
One for mining and the one for smithing.
Yep.
We then, of course, added a quest via the. We've added 2 quests since that time.
Yep. Reaper.
And then, of course, Reaper by ED3. Yep. But nothing, apart from mining and smithing, nothing new in that sense.
Yeah. So
new requirements.
Reaper's just there inherently. Quests are just there inherently. Nothing new comes up. So it is almost trivial in a sense too, as to what actually comes out within a time frame. So if we say 6 months, and in that 6 months only 3 different achievements are added.
Well, but also post comp cape rework, I think we'd expect to be adding.
We'd expect to be.
We intentionally lowballed the mining and smithing comp cape requirements
because of
we wanted to put a lot more
on,
but there were so many. Yeah. We wanted people to spend 500 respect or something, which is not very much.
And I think that's one of the other problems that sort of makes us want to do grace periods is the negative sentiment and sort of complaints about new content, like people having to rush player-owned farms just to get music means that they can't just enjoy player-owned farms. Like if you want to go to player-owned farms a month after it's come out,
whereas if we
had now you need to rush it. I have to spend millions to buy all these dragons to farm the money to go and get the seasonalizer to get the music break and then just go back to what I'm doing. I can't come back at a different time.
Yeah.
Whereas
grace periods kind of help.
If we had that grace period, like you said, then we would kind of you'd have that time to enjoy the content, but at the same time, of course, not feeling like you have to rush because I need my cape back because I want to do my PVM because of my stats or presets or whatever. So to that point, I can definitely see the advantages of a grace period.
On the other hand, I just want to slide it in there. People, I've heard players also say that they don't want grace periods because they like not seeing comp capes or whatever cape. So after a big update, they want to see who can race to get the
yeah.
the comp cape. Like after Solak, I'm pretty sure that there were obviously less people who had.
I think the content itself can do that, right? Like the content itself gives rewards.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
The first person you see wandering around with the new pet, or the first person you see wandering around with the new item.
Yeah, you're like, yeah, wow.
You know, it already achieves that, I think.
Sure, yeah, that's true.
If my skimming skills are on point, debatable. From what I can see in 2018, we only released.
Just worked out what you meant by skimming. I was trying to we've got a skimming skill. What?
No. I can only see that we added less than 10 new comp requirements in 2018, if that. So.
And that's exactly what we mean about what is it, point 3 or whatever, point 2?
We had ED 1 and 2, Solak. That's.
I'm not including not including Reaper as a new. I mean, like literally new things in that sense.
But
so.
if we did put new achievements on them, they could be something new.
Yeah.
But they just had to go on Reaper.
So I mean, it's a fascinating thing. Freeze. Oh, okay. Here we go. Freezing existing comp and trim comp capes. So
this is the biggest controversy here is don't take away my comp cape, don't take away my trim comp cape, and that's totally fair. Like we totally understand. People worked really, really hard for their trim comp capes, right? You've just comped, right? And like I'm not trim comped, right? The people who've got trim comped, they worked hard, and they shouldn't have that taken away, right? We understand that. We're talking about recategorizing things. We're talking about shuffling stuff around. It's not fair to take that away.
Okay, so if this update came out, let's use me as an example. I'm 5 comp recs away from getting completion's cape.
Yep.
You then bring out the comp cape rework and revamped everything. Can I still work towards that? I can.
Yeah. So what we're planning to do is take the existing comp cape and trim comp cape, keep them exactly as they are when the rework comes out.
Okay.
And then they'll just be there still. Anyone who's got them has still got them. Anyone who's almost got them has still almost got them. You can keep working away on the recs. They just sat there statically, exactly as they are now.
Yeah.
We wouldn't add new requirements to them.
No. Oh, so once you've got
it, you've got it.
Let's say we release this tomorrow, then the final comp rec we would have had
exactly what it is now.
Okay, right. Okay.
You might still need to get Reaper if a new boss comes out.
Okay.
But we won't be adding any random ones like a new smithing one that says go and make masterwork. We wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
so theoretically, then the final one is the mining and smithing ones if it was to release tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And just to sort of put on that point, if you currently have trim comp, you pretty much qualify. Like again, it's not definite yet, but you will definitely qualify for some of those, at least tier 1. If you've got trim
if you've got comp now, you'll probably have comp post rework anyway.
Yeah.
The new tier 1 comp.
Yep.
You probably have. You might be like a little bit off it, depending on what gets shuffled around, but you'd be close.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say maybe the same with trim comp, but again, we don't know that, so we can't say.
We can't say that for absolute sure, but that's kind of what we're aiming for. We don't want there to be a situation where you're currently comped, and then the comp cape rework comes out, and you don't have the new comp cape, and it's like hundreds of hours of work away, and you're like, what the hell's with this update? Like, we don't want to do that, so we're not planning to do that.
Right, okay, let's get into controversial requirements in regards to Reaper and Castle Wars.
So as I mentioned earlier, like we looked at what comp without Reaper would mean, and it sort of doesn't make sense. We started trying to divide up what would, like if you conceptually divide RuneScape into achievements that anyone can do given enough time, and achievements that certain players can't do even given a large amount of time. You've got all these hard achievements in combat, not much of it outside of combat, so except in as much as that there's combat in quests and stuff like that. But actually there's nothing in combat that isn't like that.
Okay.
Because there aren't any achievements tied to like farming abbey demons, right? So like actually combat is hard by that definition. So when we started, so it would basically be like comp without combat and comp with combat. Except if I can't do any Reaper bosses, then I also can't do Sliske, which means I don't have the quest cape. So it's comp without combat or quests. And it might be without minigames. And I don't know what's in this category, right? But like, so actually when we started looking at what comp without hard PVM content looks like, that's called the max cape.
Sure.
And that's a little bit reductive, but it's essentially true.
Okay.
So based on that logic, our current plan is that Reaper stays on comp, because anything else, because combat belongs on comp, Reaper belongs on combat. Therefore, without that, it sort of isn't the comp cape. And I don't mean that out of a sort of general principle of, it should be everything in the game. I mean, actually, if we start trying to remove hard PVM content from the completionist cape, we just have to remove loads of stuff.
Do you not feel groups are a problem when it comes to Reaper?
Yeah, but the same logic applies if we go through and start trying to remove all group content and that kind of thing.
No.
I could see us doing like a special group trim or whatever, and that's something I think would be relatively easy to add, and I certainly don't have a final decision on that. I could see us adding like a group bit, but it's a similar sort of logic that if we start taking out anything that can't, it's group content that can't be leached.
Why combat group content and not
exactly
mini
right?
games group content?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then other stuff sort of seeps in.
Because unfortunately, the problem is there, of course, is that we didn't have a Reaper-esque achievement for minigames which ties to comp.
Yeah.
Which obviously is a problem in kind of a way we created ourselves.
But you can't play Castle Wars without other people, right? You can't play solo, so you need other people. So that same logic almost applies to PVM, where you can't play without other people. And then if we release anything in the future, what precedent does that set?
For anyone who's saying like bosses are harder than Slisko, I mean, yes, but like what you're asking is to have the comp cape set exactly where your capabilities are. If you think that quests are fine on the comp cape, but hard bosses aren't fine on the comp cape, then you're just asking for the achievement to be set at your skill level, which isn't really fair. Like it either is everything or it's nothing, if you see what I mean. Like there's no objective way to say, that boss is too hard to be on comp. That doesn't make sense.
Cool. And so in regards to the Castle Wars requirement itself, what will become of that?
So it will remain on the legacy regardless. There is going to be a legacy trim comp cape.
Which you can get by doing...
And you have to have... We're not going to change the requirements. So that will still be on there. So if you've ground out your 5,000 Castle Wars games, it's on the legacy trim comp cape and you'll have the legacy trim comp cape to show that.
Sure.
So that achievement is being recognised still. Whether it stays on the new comp system... We don't have a final decision on that. It might be that it ends up in like tier 3 minigame, for example.
So the highest tier of a minigame.
Yeah, the highest tier of minigame. So it effectively becomes a sort of insane requirement rather than a trim requirement, if you want to think about it in those terms. But we don't have a final decision on that.
Cool.
Because it's not tied to stats anyway, it's sort of a less controversial aspect. So it's not out of the question that it would be at tier 2. It definitely wouldn't be at tier 1.
Okay, let's get into some of the stuff we've already answered in an FAQ, but I think it's kind of important to emphasise on stream if they've not read the document, which is, we've been talking about all these capes, but we haven't even seen them yet. When can we expect to have a look at what these capes look like?
Oh, I don't know.
When is a good
more about this
question?
than me.
When is a good question? We got some quick concepts just back. It was like a very early drawing.
We are polling them from what I can see.
When we get the initial final concepts, we'll definitely be polling them. I think we did a similar thing years back with current comp capes. Am I wrong? I wasn't here
before my time.
Yeah, I wasn't here, but we will bring some variations and say, do you like this one in skills or do you like this one in lore, and then see what the reception is. So it definitely will be shown off to players and it definitely will be polled. We're just waiting on that to happen, but Art knows about it and whatnot.
What becomes of skill K perks?
They will be pretty much the same. So I think we were talking about this just before the stream actually. To put skill cape perks on a cape, you will need to have max, just as you do now.
Okay.
When you unlock max, you'll be able to put 3 different skill capes onto your cape slot. If you've got an expert cape, you can add 2. So you don't actually need to max to get skill cape perks.
So an expert cape you refer to as like gathering cape?
Yeah, there's gathering cape, artisan's cape, combatant's cape, and something else. I forgot that 4th one. And they allow for 2 different capes.
So that would be like that, because we didn't say how exactly work for each thing.
Yeah.
Like that's what the passives thing means.
Yeah.
That's a passive benefit you get.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to wear a particular cape.
Cool. So if you have that max threshold, then you can then put the free perks on.
Your cape slot, yeah.
Okay, cool.
However that, I don't know, maybe you eat the skill cape and it gives you the ability. I don't know how that works.
It occurs to me reading the chat. It occurs to me that having said what I just said about PVM, as I've said several times, we don't know what's at tier 1. Yeah. Right. We haven't set down a map.
Okay, so can we just get this out of the way? Tier 3 is not going to be. Is it going to have something like kill tell us a 4K? I presume not.
Conceivably.
Conceivably.
I'm not saying it definitely will or it definitely won't. We'll have to sit down and work out what that means. It might be because we have to think about what the identity of tier 3 is, and we don't have a mission statement. Like part of the job here is to write what does it mean to have tier 3 comp, right? What does that mean? Does that mean you are a master of all aspects of the game?
I mean,
or does that mean you've just ground everything out like crazy, right? Because those are two quite different things. So we need to think about what that formal statement would be.
I honestly, like, I couldn't
It might be that we need like a hypothetical tier 4 to put really insane stuff on.
Yeah.
Like, because some people are asking us for like a 200 million cape, right? So like that doesn't belong at tier 3, but maybe that belongs at a tier 4, right? Which might not have a cape associated with it, but might have an achievement associated with it.
Again, preface this as always that everything we're talking about here is not final and can very easily subject to change. Think of this as a discussion on the devlog stuff that obviously is just released, but also a discussion to kind of give you guys an idea of the thought process behind stuff, because I feel like a devlog can only do so much compared to coming on and actually being able to dive into specific things and stuff like that.
The point I was making was it won't necessarily be the case. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying we have to decide this with your help. It won't necessarily be the case that group bosses are at tier 1 combat.
Okay.
They belong in the combat category. They belong on the comp cape. They don't absolutely necessarily belong at the tier 1 comp cape. So it might be, like, again, we need to sit down, we need to plot all this out exactly, and this is a lot of work, this is like weeks of work I'm talking about here. Like, we need to sit down and plot out exactly what everything goes everywhere in the system. It might be that we can just put all the group bosses at tier 2. Brilliant, in which case that's no longer a problem, because if you want to get tier 1 comp, you can do that without doing any group bossing. It might be that if we do that, there isn't enough at tier 1 combat, in which case that plan doesn't really work out.
So I think a very important question to ask is, from this, we're going to have one hell of a discussion from players, who will theorize about X, Y, and Z. So I think the important part is to kind of get an idea of when players can expect more information on stuff. So what can we reassure them?
Just as soon as we've got it.
Okay.
So with this design out, with mining and smithing, we just did everything in public.
Yes.
As soon as we had a document, we just published it. Like, first I would put it on Discord just to get some, because then they would say, look, it's full of typos. And then I would fix the typos, and then I would post it on Reddit, and then they would say it's full of typos, so I'd fix the typos, and then usually I would post like an updated version of it the day after or the week after, taking into account all the feedback and explaining what changes we've made based on the feedback.
So,
just as soon as we have a document, we'll publish that document.
So you obviously mentioned the mining and smithing being public and stuff like that. With that was a beta. Do we see anything like that being for this?
I don't think this needs a beta, really. There aren't really any big technical problems to experiment with.
No.
There isn't really, like, mining and smithing was partly about testing the technical stuff. It was partly about the look and feel of the skill. It was like, does mining feel good to play? This is basically just a list of achievements and a cape.
Cool. Okay.
So, like, and in the case of like the cape, let's say everyone approves the concept art, so we make the cape and we publish it, and 90% of players hate it, right? Well, we can just change it live, right? That doesn't need to be beated. So there isn't really doesn't have any impact on it does have a slight impact on the economy, obviously, because players chase achievements, but it doesn't, like, we're not ruining the value of anyone's bank, like, there's none of those sort of...
Yeah, like one of the big things with mining and smithing was doing all the replacements for people's banks. Like, that could have gone horribly wrong. Like, it actually did in beta. It didn't go horribly wrong, but like, I think one pickaxe turned into 99 pickaxes.
I think we missed 1 in 12 items in people's banks or something.
Yeah.
Every 12th item in your bank didn't get replaced, which produced absolutely bizarre bugs that were impossible to solve.
Yeah.
Because people were going, oh, none of my pickaxes got replaced. And we went, yeah, they did. Pickaxes definitely get replaced. Yeah. And someone else would go, none of my plate bodies got replaced. Yes, they did. What?
Yeah.
I think you can mention if it's a beta and something catastrophically goes wrong. I think you can say that. That's fine, because that's
absolutely, which is exactly why we had the beta.
Yeah.
But there's no reason to anticipate problems in this case.
Okay.
It's much more.
I do want to mention, because we've actually discussed this for almost an hour, so I thought it would be one hell of a discussion, and I was right on that one. But I think it's important to mention. I'll say it again. This stuff subject to change. Everything we said here is absolutely not final. It's very much still in the design bit. Am I safe in saying that? Still design and everything else like that?
Absolutely, yeah.
And the very important thing, of course, is that these guys are looking for the feedback from all of you on it. That is very important, to say the very least. You can give that feedback inevitably on the TLDW thread when it is posted on Reddit, and of course on our Discord server on discord.gg/rs. There is going to be one hell of a discussion about all of this, I feel, because you're all very passionate about this, which is great to see. So it's just about finding that middle ground where we can obviously, smash it, really. So Apart from that, though, that'll take us to the end of the stream. Pretty much covered as much as I wanted to. We did have some general stuff, but I had a feeling this is going to take a lot of discussion because, of course, naturally, it's a very divisive topic in regards to what we're going through. But yes, thank you so much, everyone. Is there anything you guys want to say before we wrap up here?
I'm just checking. I wrote down a list of stuff to cover.
Yeah, have you covered everything?
I think we've covered everything. Yeah. There was one. There are a lot of people still expressing a concern about us devaluing their achievements, which is really what we don't want to do. I think so in the case of like if you've worked hard to get some accomplishment so that it will be recognised, that will still exist in the new system, like because it's not going to be that different. We're talking about categorising things a little bit more clearly, defining things a little bit more clearly. But if you worked for some particular goal, that goal should still be recognised. The group that I think are losing out potential, or it might feel like they're losing out, are the ones who worked on comp for stats and don't actually want comp.
Don't want comp as in...
They didn't actually want to do Livid Farm.
Right.
What they wanted were the stats. And those players are going to say, why does someone who didn't grind out Livid Farm deserve the same stats as me? Because that's the state they'll be in after the rework. And like my answer to that is, you benefit because next time there's a Livid Farm that you don't want to grind out, you don't have to do it. So although you ground out Livid Farm in the past, we can't really fix that for you. But
what you can say is, instead of having your best in slot combat cape, you're not given a skill-esque achievement to do.
Because going forward, after the rework,
you'd get your combat stats back via.
You'd keep your combat stats even when we release Livid Farm 2,
right? Which
requires 250 hours of skilling.
Please don't ever say that word again. Dear God, please.
So even though it feels like you're losing out, you're not. You're benefiting. It's just it'll take a while before you can see how you're benefiting.
Awesome.
The other is there was just some people in the chat saying, like, they're obviously not listening to our feedback. They're obviously not going to change anything, which is weird because like that's exactly what we're asking.
Yeah, that's what we have it for.
We changed loads about mining and smithing.
I think for the better as well for the update itself. I mean, it was awesome.
So you like everything. Like if we said, like it's part of the design, you get the stats from any one of the categories. That's not final. It's like 2 lines of code to change that.
Yeah.
Like that's not a final decision at all. Let us know what you think of it.
Cool. All right. That will wrap it up, everyone. So as always, thank you so much for joining us. This was probably one of the most in-depth discussion streams I've ever had in regards to just literally talking about one topic for a very long amount of time. So was obviously exhausting in trying to make sure we covered everything we wanted to cover, but I think
You mean exhaustive?
Exhaustive, yes. So I think the stream helped in, kind of elaborating on some certain things in there. But apart from that, everyone, thank you so much, as always, for joining us. We'll end the stream. I'll head upstairs, fire out your RuneScape, and good luck on your parcel from that one. But as always, join the server, talk to these guys involved in it, the entire team, Mod Breezy, Mod Doctor, Mod Tomb, Mod Jack. I think that's everyone. Yep. That's the team. Perfect. All right. I'll wrap it up for everyone here, everyone. So thank you so much for joining us. Take care and have a good one.
Cheers.